Welcome back to The Verdict. It's the election eve edition, and don't forget that we're here to bring you all things 2019 general elections. You can hashtag 2019 elections. But let me get to Mr. Amba on this one. Quite a number of issues that have been raised by the gentleman in the studio here, ranging from transportation. First of all, let me take that of policemen attached to politicians. In terms of the movement, Mr. Innocent Chukwuma did raise that concern. What is the arrangement to ensure that they do not, or they carry out their functions as they ought to?
Okay. First of all, let me just pay tribute to the two speakers in the studio. Innocent Chukwuma is clearly one of the best brains to emerge in Africa when you talk of issues of policing and research on internal security. And so when he speaks from that vantage position of an insider that have a very good understanding of the internal workings of the police. Similarly, Mr. Nwankwo here with me in the studio has also become a guru and a veteran when it comes to issues of electioneering and the monitoring and observation of our electoral system. So when men like this speak, eggheads like this speak, and I'm in the studio, I'm bound to just listen and take notes. Having said that, let me return very quickly to what Innocent Chukwuma said. He clearly and very honestly itemized some of the major logistic challenges that we are facing as a law enforcement agency. But you know, at the end of the day, we have to work with what we have. And that's where leadership comes in. That's where management comes in. I remember clearly a criminologist who said some time ago that an ideal police officer should and must have the wisdom of Solomon. He should also have the courage of David, the faith of Daniel, the strength of Samson, the leadership of Moses, the kindness of the Good Samaritan, the tolerance of Joseph, the carpenter of Nazareth, the diplomacy of Lincoln, and above all, a working knowledge of virtually every sphere of human endeavor. That kind of captures the kind of requirements you need to be a functional police officer. But it also gives you a picture that as a police officer, you're expected to be a magician. And that's what we do in Nigeria. Oftentimes, we work in very difficult situations. We work practically with our bare hands. We do things because we love this country. And so, even with all the challenges that Innocent Chukwuma have listed, which are indeed factual, we still remain committed. We are still committed and irrevocably so in delivering on our core mandate. What we've done here is, I give you an example of logistics when it comes to issue of transportation, for example. We just have to be creative. We sometimes use our personal vehicle to convey officers around. We use operational vehicle. Commanders have to create ways of making sure that our personnel get to their duty points, and we continue to do so. Communication, we deploy both telephones as well as walkie-talkies. And in terms of covering the field, we ensure that we use motorized patrols to link up with our personnel in various polling booths. So they are very difficult situations, they are very challenging, but we will deliver. On the issue of policemen attached to VIPs, the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has made his position very, very clear. A very strong, strict, clear instructions have been passed. Policemen on close protection services to VIPs have been withdrawn. Okay. And on election day, we must not see any police officer accompanying any of the VIP to the polling station or the voting centers. If we do see any of such policemen, that policeman will have himself, or that policeman or policewoman will have himself or herself to blame. And I also want to believe that because we run a very regimented organization, because the IGP's directives must be carried to the letter, I want to believe, and strongly and honestly so, that our personnel will not flout those directives. As I speak to you, we have done those withdrawals. I've gotten calls from a lot of VIPs, in quotes, who have complained very bitterly that that police officers attached to them have been withdrawn. And I told them, yes, that has to be so. We have two reasons, basically, for withdrawing policemen around this period. Number one, we needed to have optimum utilization of our manpower. We want to maximize our resources. So we need to call them back. We need to have them available for deployment for this election. And then secondly, the IGP is committed to providing a level playing field for everybody. We understand very clearly that even when a policeman is attached to a VIP and the policeman continues to conduct himself professionally, the mere fact that you find that policeman around the VIP during the election period clearly will give that VIP an added advantage. It creates an impression or an air of soft power around the VIP. It gives the VIP some extra soft power around him. We want to strip them of that soft power. Mr. Mba, we want to make sure
just
that all Nigerians see themselves as equal.
Pardon me, but I get that point, but I think he also mentioned the public servants who also congregate around such persons. Can anything be done about that?
Well, if the public servant is not a police officer and he's not a member of any of the security agencies, and they come in to the police centers as if they are just citizens coming to cast their vote, then clearly you know that it will be difficult for us as law enforcement agents to just begin to query that. Except there are overt signs, except there are conducts that give them out, except there are things, or they begin to conduct themselves in a manner capable of disturbing the public's peace, or they begin to do anything that constitutes an offense under the Electoral Act, we will certainly be infringing on people's right to movement, people's right to friendship, if there's anything like that. I mean, you can't just, if I'm walking on the street with Clement Nwankwo or with you or with Innocent Chukwuma on an election day and we're going to the same polling center to cast our vote, no policeman will stop us if we're not conducting ourselves in a manner inconsistent or in a manner that will amount to infraction of the extant laws. So those areas might be a bit slippery, but we'll be keeping our eyes and ears on the ground. And we'll be watching out for any clue that will give them out.
My apologies. Let me get the views of Mr. Nwankwo at this point, because Mr. Frank has really painted a picture that seems to suggest to a lot of people watching that tomorrow is going to come really free, which is what we actually pray for. And will not have any situations that will warrant maybe the police having to go overboard in this case. But haven't heard his submissions. And you, on the one hand, talk about the perception that having the military, or should I say the army now, out there on election day raises a lot of concerns for you. But what, in your view, do you think the police can do such that if we have incidences of ballot box snatching, which the president made an earlier statement on, what do you think the police can do to perfect their operations on that day such that they can arrest such situations, or any election malpractice? They can arrest such situations to the extent that the army doesn't, or should I say the soldiers now, don't have to come in?
The soldiers must not come in. It's not their responsibility to police elections. The law is very clear, and if you also look at the provisions in the election guideline that INEC has, it provides responsibilities and duties of law enforcement agencies. And if you look at paragraph 1 of the INEC guidelines, it's quite clear on what the role of security agencies would be. It includes provide security at the polling units. It includes ensuring that the polling units and declaration of results are conducted without any disturbance, take action to prevent violence or any activity that disrupts the elections, and ensure that they comply with lawful directives. It includes, in fact, ensuring that persons who cause disturbance or prevent the smooth conduct of proceedings and voting at polling units are apprehended. Mr. Frankenberg has made the point that besides that they would have police officers helping to facilitate voting at the polling units, they would also have detachments of police officers whose duties would be to respond very quickly to reports from their personnel at the polling units that there is a disturbance. Now, everybody, and this is what we're taught in law school, from the very first year you enter the university, you're taught as a lawyer that it is better that that 9 guilty persons escape than that 1 innocent person suffer perdition. Now, if you do have a situation where someone comes and, to snatch a ballot box, it's the responsibility of the police person to arrest the person. If it becomes so very disruptive, they have backup. They call in that backup, and they're able to contain and deal with the situation. If that person escapes, then that's what it is. They would have to do investigation to see whether they can find it. But there is no responsibility, and it will indeed be tragic and unlawful and amount to extrajudicial killing for anybody to shoot someone on account of snatching ballot boxes. That's the point we've been making all along.
Okay.
Now, INEC has also made it so very unnecessary for anybody to snatch ballot boxes.
All right.
Because once you snatch ballot boxes, INEC has in its own guidelines provisions to nullify the consequences of that. And if INEC has provided the situation under its own guidelines, then it will be unnecessary to call in the army, the DSS, or indeed any other arm of security into an electoral environment.
Let me ask Mr. Chuguma this, because I mean that point, you know, as it sounds, as interesting as it is, but you know, what do we do to those who would look at that and think, okay, here's what we'll do. If we feel that the opposition or we're weaker in this area, all we need to do is just disrupt the system or the process. They'll cancel it.
But this is where technology comes in, which INEC has invested heavily in the last 2 rounds of general election, beginning, of course, with 2011, but more specifically 2015 election. That you have a PVC, you have voters, the card reader, and that you cast your vote and you go. If somebody snatches that ballot, all you need to do is to nullify elections that happens in that polling unit. Now, it might sound very plausible in terms of theory than practice, but then the technology that INEC is deploying will invalidate whatever if INEC itself, because this whole thing comes from institutional sincerity and commitment to the process. So no ballot box snatcher can succeed without some INEC covering the impact of that snatching.
Okay, let's go to our correspondent, Ibrahim Adra. He's in Katsina. Boy, they've got 98% of permanent voter card collection. That seems to be the highest from the books of INEC here. Ibrahim, okay, we'll see how we can get to hear from him.
I want to quickly ask Mr. Nwankwo this. The kind of... if you don't mind us going quickly back to the issue of...
Which one is that? No, you can't go...
oh, not to Abuja now. Okay, I can stick with Mr. Chukuma then. I've done a little. I wasn't good at maths in school, okay, but there are approximately 70. Yes, I did. Approximately 72, a little more than 72 million people who have collected their PVCs and will be voting, and. In all, we are looking at 3 elections per you vote for the president, vote for the Senate, vote for the House of Representatives. That's 72 million times 3. That's 116 million ballot papers. If each polling unit, about more than 190 of them, will have 3 card readers, that's about 570,000 card readers. Just 1 million ad hoc staff to take care of that.
But you only need one verification before you vote for these 3 rounds. So in terms of the personnel requirement, the average polling unit has about 500 or so registered voters, and we've never had 100% turnout. Actually, on average, it's been hovering about 50%, which means you're looking at, let's say, if the enthusiasm that has been expressed, comes out on election day, you may have about 50–55% turnout. That's reasonable enough for a person doing the verification to do within a unit.
Let me quickly get to Abuja, because I know the gentlemen have a tight schedule right now. But I'm just wondering, Mr. Mbah, does that, for those who think, wait a minute, if they listen to the submissions, yes, the police said they're going to deploy about, what, 350,000 policemen? But how easy is it going to be if one raises a question about fake policemen in about 3, 4, 5 states, or in a state that have 10 to 15 localities? Can the police adequately respond, given the fact that you have transportation challenges?
Chamberlain, you need to understand that this is not the first time we are conducting election in this country. We conducted election in 1999. We had another general election in 2011. We also policed the elections in 2015. And now we are tasked with the responsibility of policing the elections again in 2019. And so it's not like a new terrain. It's not an exclusively or an essentially new terrain for us. It's a road we've walked over and over again. And we have lessons we've learned from the past and the previous elections. And that's why you've noticed that for each election that we've midwifed or we've policed in Nigeria, we've always done better than the previous ones, because we consolidate on lessons learned. We look at the elections, we draw from our mistakes in the past and look at what we've done very well, consolidate them into what we call best practices and try to replicate them in subsequent elections.
Okay.
So I just want to say that, yes, there are indeed there are indeed concerns. Some of these concerns you're raising are actually genuine concerns, but we have our ways of handling that. I've told you that.
I hear you, but let me quickly...
We are practically magicians when it comes to police in this country.
Let me bring in Mr. Nwankwo on this one, and in less than a minute, that's how much time we've got. Could you then tell us, give us, an idea of how your expectations rate? If you were to put it in percentages, what would it be?
I don't do the number crunching. Basically, I think that in terms of the alphabet, we're looking very much at the fact, we're hoping very much that the lessons from the postponement has been taken, that INEC has taken lessons, and indeed in the last few days that the chairman has been putting out information on preparations and briefing the nation, that the reports and feedback coming through have been quite taken. We're hoping that all of the comments being made by citizens, political parties, candidates, and indeed all election stakeholders expecting the police to do what is right, to be very professional, that has been taken on board, expressing concern about the other arms of the military, the army, the DSS, and all of that, that they have taken note of the concerns citizens have, that their business with elections should be limited to the extent that it is requested by INEC. We're hoping that all of the parties understand that in going out to vote, that citizens have the right to make their decisions, and that they should respect the rules of the electoral process and ensure that they respect the rights of citizens to make decisions.
All right.
We're looking forward to a good election, and we're hoping that these expectations will be addressed, and that INEC has in place a machinery to respond rapidly to concerns that citizens have and show with respect to this. From us in the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, we are fully mobilized, and I'm sure all the other observers are mobilized as well to be able to engage these elections to work towards its credibility and support the process.
By all means, we'll also, the media will always be there to do what they can. So, Mr. Mba, don't forget, you can drop those hotlines such that we can also let the public know whatever number, whatever approach or strategy they can get across to the police when you do. So that's it for this segment. We'll go to break, but we need to thank Mr. Clement Wanko of the Situation Room. My name is Frank Mba, who is the Force Public Relations Officer. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on The Verdict. The Verdict will be back in a moment. Don't go away.